Good people, what's up? You are now tuned in to another episode of your favorite podcast, the Layup Line Pod. I'm one of your co-hosts, or should I say co-captains, AJ, with my brother and the other co-captain, Mark. Mark, what's good, baby?
Chilling.
You in the mood today?
Yeah, I'm in the mood. You know why I'm in the mood?
Tell us why.
I felt good today on the court this morning. We just couldn't get the wins.
You throw the butt in there, but couldn't get a dub.
Couldn't get a dub, right back.
But those of you who don't know, this podcast is taped right after we hoop.
Yeah.
Which makes it more, what makes it special, right? It's not, we don't set up and rest and relax and sip tea and go through.
No.
We are hooping and we are talking.
And we are tired, boss.
Word. So today's podcast is going to be different than what we've talked about before,
Okay.
and more personal. Not necessarily sports related or anything sports related, but not necessarily talking about current event sports, but more so about our past, or at least us knowing our past, right? Which I allude to sometimes on my mini segments of Car Chronicles, and I'm sure you have many segments on Moments with Mark, but more so knowing your path and how did you get to where you were, were there any issues getting where you were, I should say hiccups or roadblocks. But let's start off with this. When did you know you wanted to do what you currently do?
Oh, great question. Wow, it's a good one. I knew maybe in 19...
The 1900s? The 1900s?
No, I went to school in Vermont, finished up in Vermont, and then I started coaching on the college level out there. And then, so I was coaching and always, I thought I was always teaching. So I ended up becoming a coach. Again, this was a college level. Granted, it wasn't Duke or nothing like that. It was NAIA school. But I was the head coach. I was like 23 years old. So I was fresh out of school. The overseas stuff was done. Wasn't big names. So I didn't go overseas and stuff like that. So I started coaching and teaching, and then that's when I realized I really had a good passion for it. And this is like, I swear, this is like 94, 95.
Okay. So for the coaching or
coaching.
Okay, so coaching.
So that's when I realized that at that point in 94, 95, I realized skill development was needed.
Okay.
But did a lot of
very
stuff.
early on.
So I realized people couldn't pivot off the right foot or the correct foot and stuff like that. So I incorporated my basketball stuff into skill development into our basketball stuff. And it's like 94, 95. And then I moved back to New York City, and then I became a JV basketball coach at our local high school. It was a powerhouse high school at the time. And then from there, obviously JV basketball, JV women, girls at the time, basketball.
Yes.
Patience.
Yeah.
Patience. So that's when I really started incorporating skill development.
Okay.
And then met a couple pros and then started working with them, and that's when I realized that it was needed for every level of basketball.
Right.
And that's when I got into where I'm at.
So my first question to that, so when did Footprint start? Because you said 95, you recognized that there was a void. So when did Footprint start? Or is it the training aspect of Footprint?
Right, so I started that in like 2000. And it wasn't.
Okay.
It wasn't.
Okay, so 5 years after you recognized the void. Okay, so two things. For me,
How about yourself?
For me, I was out of college. I was at the gym playing, and one of my homeboys, Greg, who ran the gym, put me on to a client. My first ever client was like, "Hey, actually, it's his workout." And he was like, "Hey, I can't work out this young lady. Do you want to work her out?" All right. I knew nothing about training. All I knew was that obviously I knew basketball, and I had a passion for helping. I've ran camps and stuff before, but in terms of a one-on-one or a training session, never knew. So I'm like, cool, no problem. So, I go back home and I get a piece of paper. I got all my drills listed. I'm like, I'm about to go into this structure. And I enjoyed it, right? The one-on-one, I really enjoyed it. The girl turned out to be a phenomenal player. But that was my first taste of training. Somebody put me onto it. And from that, it blossomed to something completely different, or bigger, I should say. But to go back to your comment about you're recognizing that training is needed on every level, I was recently doing some work with a G League team, or visiting a G League team, and I was speaking to the head coach of the G League team, and our conversation was based around how players that he has in the G League don't have common skill sets or
Right.
don't have the basic skill sets,
Right.
and he's working with them on things that I work with my
Yeah.
ninth graders on.
Yeah.
And I was shocked at that. I was like, wow, like you really doing the same thing I'm doing at a higher level. Like, it's just odd that they don't have the skills that you believe they have. But if you look at the NBA, you will see players who can't do stuff that you would expect them to do.
Right.
Even, I tell guys when we work on like more high level skills like a floater in the paint or a left hand for off hand floater. Like these are things that some pro guys, beyond a Kyrie or a Steph or something, you're not seeing a guy shoot an offhand floater or certain things you're like, wow, I would expect him to be able to do this, right? That's why when people talk about free throws and they're like, oh, this dude can't shoot free throws, that's a skill, right? That's a skill that you have to work on.
It is. That's a great point. And what I try to do now is I have sessions where we have a high school level kids that are pretty good. They're pretty good across the board. And in the summertime, I have them stick around for our pro workouts. And some of them join in, the high level high school kids join in, but they see the same exact drills, the same exact drills that I teach the pros, that I teach them. And the only difference is the intensity level.
Intensity
level.
Or you're not doing so much instruction, right?
Just go.
Just go, hey, this is what we're doing, go do it, right? Whereas you may be teaching more. And that's what I tell my clients. I'm going to teach you the same thing I would teach a guy at a much higher level. It'll just be different. I'm going to teach it differently to you or a different tone. But it's the same thing, which is good because now they understand like, okay, I can be this if I continue to work at this. I can be him.
Right.
But that's very odd. So my next question to you is, what was your path? Like, what was your path to get to where you were? You said you were a coach at an NAIA, but what was your path? So you played college where?
Vermont. So I went to junior college. New York City Public School didn't necessarily prepare me for the academia world. Going to college level, so I had to go to JUCO.
A big thing.
I had to go to JUCO. I went to Jefferson Community College up in Watertown, New York. Don't ask why, how, whatever. But I'll tell you this, and he's still alive, and one of my favorite coaches of all time, Bob Williams. The reason why I went to this school, he drove from Watertown, New York. We could tag this. He drove from Watertown, New York to New York City, watched me poop in the park, right? His last name is Williams. At that point, I had never met a white Williams in my life.
Oh, wow.
He went in there and wowed my grandmother. Wowed my grandmother.
I'm a Williams.
You guys seen Blue Chips? When Nick Nolte walked into the church? That was Bob Williams.
Wow.
But anyway, so I went there, then I went to a school in Vermont, St. Joe's in Vermont. That's where I ended up at. And then it was just basketball. That's it. That's all I did, basketball.
Okay.
And eight.
So from that school to coaching to coming down here coaching, and then you went into footprints, and now it is what it is.
It is what it is. Yeah.
Okay.
How about yourself?
I went from, for those who don't know, born and raised Detroit, Michigan. I was recruited to go to school out here in New York, Albany, when Albany was not Albany of today. God bless them for growing and doing the things, but it was definitely on the backs of not just myself, but other people who went through the initiation to Division I and even Division II, the guys that I came in with, or the guys that I played with as we went D1. But I'm glad to see what they're doing now. But needless to say, so I went from there, then I went through the pro ranks for about 7-8 years. I started my first training company, or I started my training company under a different name with my partner in 2005.
I remember that name.
Got Gang.
Yeah.
Got Gang was my first name with my partner, and we started in Michigan doing a bunch of things, even worked with the Pistons a little bit. Then I moved out here for family reasons, and then I started my current company, Overtime, shortly after that. And